you dream of a classroom where learning is natural? Can we inspire students to lifelong learning? What exactly is the purpose of an education? Inspiring students to be curious, independent, creative, innovative, deep thinking, confident, proactive, collaborative, determined, educated. Rise to the challenge of changing the world. This is teaching. This is learning. This is who we are. Welcome to the Tabletop Inventing Podcast.
How does a teacher in a rural U.S. school end up in an international school in Thailand? What is it like to feel the blast of a terrorist bombing? How does a teacher navigate learning during an Ebola crisis in Nigeria? Listen into today's podcast for the curious answers. Hey there, Innovation Nation. It's springtime in the high desert and I'm starting to get spring fever. For me, spring fever almost always compels me to a road trip. I think that traveling and seeing new places stimulates the brain in ways that few other activities can. In fact, one of my favorite quotes about traveling is from T.S. Elliot. "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." Road trips always get me to thinking about our Inventors Boot Camps too, because we always manage to work a road trip into our plans. I love our Inventors Boot Camps because students learn so much and see so many new sights. The students build crazy engineering contraptions with 3D printers, wire them up with a little electronic trickery, and then program them to do amazing feats. The creativity, confidence, curiosity, and deep thinking of the students in these summer camps is almost unbelievable. To find out more, visit ttinvent.com/bootcampnow. That's BOOTCAMPNOW. Or you can just visit ttinvent.com and click the Inventors Bootcamp button. Today's guest started his teaching career in a rural school with only 63 students and ended up teaching in the primary grades of 3 other countries across the globe. His insights into education in Americanized schools across the globe has some very interesting twists. So our guest today is Henrique Guerreiro. Henrique started off his student teaching in K-5 at a little school called Citrus South Tule in the Central Valley in California. And after teaching there for a few years, decided to try something very unusual and new and took a leap from the Central Valley in California out to Bangkok, Thailand, or to a little school just outside of Bangkok. And since then has also taught in Pakistan and is currently in Lagos, Nigeria. Henrique, tell us a little more about yourself.
Hi, Steve. Nice talking to you again. This is the first time thing for me. I've never been interviewed for something like this. But I grew up in San Diego, California, and my mother was born and raised in the Valley and actually went to that little schoolhouse where I started teaching. And I think I was just telling you, at one point it was just her family that was there filling the school with the students. And once that job opening came open, I had just earned my credential and decided, well, let me go check this out and see if I can get a job at the little schoolhouse. What a fun place to start my career.
So for our listeners, tell them a little bit about the size of this little schoolhouse.
It's, now it's a little more modern than before, but it's an old historic, I think it's a UNESCO heritage site, a historical building. And it's real tiny. It's like the little house in the prairie with the bell on the top and one-room schoolhouse, a little storage room in the back. And now it serves as the library because it's not up to code to have students in there for a certain amount of time. But just really cool, and if you drive by and see it, you'd be surprised that it's still functional. But tiny. I think the largest enrollment we had was 63 at one time, 63 students, kindergarten through grade 6. So very small. Everybody taught a combined classroom. I had grades 2 and 3. I think that was a 1 year and out for that. But just a great little environment, so small, such a family feeling at that campus. It was amazing.
So what prompted you to start looking abroad for other interesting opportunities? Like, how did that come up?
Well, honestly, I'd always wanted to do it. Even when I was getting my credential, I would look at the Department of Defense schools, and they always said you needed 2 years' experience before even applying. So that had always been in my mind. When I got to Citrus South Tule, I had family there. I was enjoying the life. And then I'd met somebody who had just taught summer school in Spain. And she had mentioned that she wanted to go overseas again. So that really got me thinking again and looking into it, and then remembering that I had a childhood friend who was teaching in Thailand at the time. I thought, geez, why not? It's already been 5 years here at Citrus South. Let me contact my friend Olivia and send her my resume, letter of interest, and had an interview with the superintendent at an international job fair in Waterloo, Iowa, of all places, the original international job fair for American teachers going overseas. And just started in Thailand. Beautiful place. Beautiful place. An interesting little school, too.
What was the most interesting or difficult transition going from the U.S. to Thailand?
I always grew up with different accents, different ways of doing things, so being around a different culture wasn't as difficult as I think it was for a lot of people. It was very exciting to just be amongst them now and waking up in Thailand and hearing the different sounds outside and the different smells. And most Thais don't speak English, so right away you start picking up on some of the language. So it's actually very, very exciting. The difficult part was in the valley. I had a house and all these material items that I didn't know what to do with, so I just liquidated. I just got rid of everything, just sold it all and left. That was really the only challenge. The rest of it was just exhilarating, getting out to Bangkok and seeing a part of the world that I've always thought of, okay, traveling through Europe and Central America, but Southeast Asia wasn't really on my list. And pleasant surprise. Amazing.
So, in that school environment in Thailand, what were the students like? Where did they come from? What was your sort of normal day-to-day?
Well, the school, I learned right away, is you can put the word international in your school name. This was called the Thai Chinese International School. But once we got there, we realized right away that the biggest international contingency there was the staff. There were Americans, Canadians, Brits, Filipinos, of course Thais and Taiwanese. But the student body was 97% Thai nationals and Taiwanese business children, the owners of businesses there in Bangkok. A few Korean kids and like 1% other. So the student body wasn't as international as you would think, but the staff is very international. And different ways of transitioning to classes were the bells they would ring. Sometimes it would be a little song, like a child's song, and we would be sitting in class and all of a sudden we'd hear this weird song, and well, it was the office trying out a new tune for the kids to transition. In America, we get a bell, beep, 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 or something buzzing off really obnoxiously. But this was actually very confusing, and I think it lasted about a week or two. Then they realized, yeah, this isn't working. But it was pretty funny, the different tunes we'd hear and just come out of nowhere over the loudspeakers. But the kids were amazing, friendly, hardworking. Of course, the English, them learning to speak English was a lot harder because they had to revert back to their Thai or Mandarin they were done in class. Where these other schools now, you have a Korean child in your English language course with a Dutch child and a Brazilian child. Well, they don't have a common language. They have to speak English. So their English improves dramatically and so rapidly. It's awesome. But in Thailand, it was a bit difficult for the kids because they all spoke the same language, so it wasn't as available to them, English, on a daily basis.
So it sounds like a couple of the different schools you have been at have been quite different. So tell us a little bit about maybe about Pakistan. What was the school like there?
Well, when we decided, I'd met my ex-fiance in Thailand, and we had the same dreams of seeing the world, so we figured, well, let's just hop around the world, and we'll teach 2 years here and 2 years there, and just be in every continent, except Antarctica, but try to bounce around as much as we could. And we found out that the good schools aren't going to want people who just commit to 2 years and then bail. 2 years and then bail. They spend a lot on professional development. They spend a lot on getting you moving you in, getting you settled, that they want 4-year commitments. So we decided the next school we're going to go to, we're going to have to stay for a little while. So let's make a good decision. And at the time, Islamabad wasn't very appealing. Let me tell you, to be honest with you. Wasn't really too thrilled about going there, but the school and the director was so friendly, so warm, really showed a big interest in us, and plus the package was amazing. All we had to spend our money on was food and entertainment. Otherwise, these schools, they take care of your every daily need. So when we're looking at what we were getting in Thailand and what we would get in Pakistan, it kind of smoothed out all those edges of unrest and potential violence in the city of Islamabad, and we took a day to think about it, and then ended up going to International School of Islamabad and had an amazing experience. And that was a truly international school. You had all these NGOs and all these embassies, being the capital of a country. My first class was third grade, and I had 18 kids. And of the 18 kids, there were 12 different passports. And
wow.
yeah, and same this year. This year I have 20 kids, and I have 13 different passports. But that first year in Islamabad was amazing because it was truly international. I would tell the kids about my recent flight experience from Bangkok to Islamabad, and they say, oh, we've been to Thailand. Oh, we've been to Myanmar. I mentioned my trip to India. Oh, I've been to India. It's like these kids had been everywhere, and they were 8, 9 years old. So there wasn't really much you could impress them with, because they've already been to maybe 20 countries as a child. Their father's a leader of an NGO that brings solar panels to people in the rural areas, or somebody works for the Swiss embassy, and he's the legal representative for the Swiss embassy. And they just travel. And they speak 3 languages, not like 3 romance languages. I had a boy whose father was Austrian, so he spoke Austrian German, and his mother was Iranian, so he spoke Farsi as well, and was in ELL for 2 years and spoke perfect English. So this 8-year-old child had 3 languages that he spoke proficiently. And so for me, that was the amazing part. The first month, I was blown away by the real international feel of that school.
So as a teacher in that environment, how did you get a good classroom ethic and get your students really deeply involved in the learning process? It sounds like there might have been some challenges there, maybe establishing credibility, etc. How did you create that?
I walked in thinking that I would really have to do things a bit differently, but quickly realized these were just kids again who were very young and new, but they'd already been experienced in an international classroom. They've already been in classrooms with so many different colored kids, forms of dress, different maybe habits. All the little Asian kids always had these really nice, neatly packed lunches with wonderful seafood and fresh vegetables, and the Indian children had those little silver towers with their bowls of rice and curries, and just they already been experienced all these different things, that there really wasn't anything difficult to get around with the children and getting them to work with each other. We didn't have any Israeli students in Pakistan. Being a Muslim republic, it really wasn't a place you were going to see any of them. They wouldn't be allowed in, for one thing. Indian children, and of course with the Pakistan-India sort of tension, you would expect to see some problems, but Hindi and Urdu is the language up there in the northern part of Pakistan, and most of Pakistan actually, it's very similar. So the Indian boy would be hanging out with the Pakistani boy speaking Urdu and Hindi to each other and get along fine. I mean, they're still kids. They don't know the politics yet and the history of what the adults have done, so they just get along really well.
So that's an interesting perspective I hadn't thought about. So have you seen any other experiences like that where there's some curious cross-cultural relationships among the kids that you might not expect with the parents?
Ones that I noticed right away is I had 2 Indian girls. Suniti, her father was in the finance department with the Indian embassy there, so they were of a higher class. And then Shilpika, her father was part of the maintenance crew at the embassy, so they took care of the grounds and the lawn mowing, and they were of a lower class. So in the classroom, they were equals. They were together in the class, but you could also see the different education levels, where Suniti had been going to international schools. She definitely was able to think more outside the box, think for herself, more independent, where Shilpika was in that old system of rote memory. You're not learning to ask the how is that, the whys, just more of the what is and the wheres, nothing really in depth. So getting her to be able to ask questions, and so Shilpika, what do you think? And she would look at me like, But within a few months, any curious kid is excited to express their opinions and ask questions. So that was huge to see the different educational level between those 2 kids. Now, if they go back to the embassy, they don't really hang out as much together because of their different class, which was very strange. Kind of upsetting at times too, but that's just the way it was for their 2 countries. Because I'll go back to, with the Indian embassy, being in Pakistan, and with the strife between the 2 countries, they bring all their own people. Most everybody will hire local Pakistanis to do your day-to-day work, but the Indians, they bring everybody, their own gardeners, their own cooks, their own cleaning staff. But in kudos to them, they also send them all to the same school. So these kids are getting an education that they wouldn't get if they were back in India. Also for security reasons, mainly so they're all housed in one area.
Interesting. So how did you end up making the transition then from Pakistan now to Nigeria?
We were in Pakistan from August of 2007 to June of 2010, and during that time was a lot of unsettling situations there. I remember the Marriott bombing going off, and we were going to a birthday party, and our house shook. And my ex screamed from upstairs, and I just said, "Get under the doorway, get under the doorway." You know, in California with earthquakes, the first thing you're taught to do as a kid back then was to go into a door jamb. So I was like, "Get away from the windows and stand under the door jamb." And then eventually the PTV, Pakistani television, we turned on and started talking about the Marriott bombing. Like, oh my God. Our first year, the Danish embassy blown up by, I can't remember if it was the Taliban or the Al-Qaeda. But they were our neighbors. Unfortunately, we were at school. So when the bomb went off and all our windows were blown out, we weren't home for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was really unsettling. That was the last week of our first year. And, you know, I can honestly sit and tell you about 5 different bombs that I remember hearing or feeling during those 3 years. And it just seemed like, you know, it's time to move on. Time to move on. No, don't want to push it anymore. So, hey, let's go to Lagos, Nigeria. It's much safer there. But no, it would just seem time to move on. And we decided to come here. Let me see. We had friends that left Pakistan, came here. We felt bad for them. It's like, God, Lagos, Nigeria, what are you doing there? Wasn't there something else you could have done? And then they sent us a copy of the package here at this school. And immediately it was just like, wow, okay, they really do compensate you for what you're getting into. So we thought about it. And after going to the job fairs, just really tired of job fairs and sort of the meat market feeling there. So if we can get a job through Skype and an interview that way and not have to go to one of these job fairs, and let's try it. We were offered the positions. I went back to teach grade 4, and my ex was middle school English. We took the contracts. You know, it's living in Pakistan and living in Lagos, Nigeria. It's a totally different perspective living in a place. Because, I mean, even today I go to the news and read about Lagos. I'm living in a pit. I'm living in a horrible place. It's disgusting, but I was at the beach yesterday, you know, right 5 minutes from my flat. I'm not lying to you, a beautiful little beach, learning how to kite surf. Had a grilled fish on the beach, some cold beers. Later that night, went to a local pub and saw England and Ireland in a Six Nations rugby match. You know, it's a good life here. This is my 5th year, and there's a lot of cool things to see, but you're not going to be able to find that on the news or YouTube or Googling it. It's not being told to people outside, so recruiting is hard, but once people get here, they realize, hey, it's not that bad. It's pretty cool. And here it's another truly international school. Like I said, I have 13 now. A little South African boy just started 2 weeks ago, so that was like the 13th different passport I have. And same thing, like kids have been to international schools for a while, so they kind of already have that feel of different cultures, different names, different ways of doing things. But the kids just get along well and have a great time.
So how long do the students stay on average in these international schools? Do they tend to be somewhat transient because parents are coming in and then going, or do they tend to be there a few years?
Yeah, it depends on the company's contracts. The American oil companies here are on 3-year contracts, and if the parents decide they want to stay longer, they can do another 2 years. So a lot of them are here 3 years. There's a lot of support industry here, so people that might own their own businesses. You'll have a lot of Dutch people. The families will be here 5 to 6 years. There's a huge Lebanese community here in Lagos. Their parents went to our school, and these kids are now at our school, and they'll be here from pre-K through graduating or go off to boarding school. So it's a transient rate. That's the international thing too. So right now I'm on my 3rd principal, my 3rd superintendent. Not a lot of continuity, but it works. It works.
So do you have a lot of opportunity, or maybe I should say, do you take a lot of opportunities to get out and experience the local culture and see what does it look like on a daily basis in locals' view?
There's a really nice group here called the Nigerian Field Society, and for like a $20 annual membership, you get their emails and their newsletters about leading little trips around the city and seeing different parts of the culture. Are we friends on Facebook? Yeah, we are. That's all. Okay. You should go to my albums, and there's a couple albums about local things that we've done. And gone to Makoko Island. It's a stilt village, and you see how people live on the water. Not quite like Venice. I wouldn't compare it to that, but they live on stilts. Stilted houses over the water. We've gone just east of here about an hour and a half to do some canoeing through the mangroves and little villages. out in that area. So it's a lot like Pakistan, where you have this big city in an area that 30 years ago was jungle, and it's just this big industrial complex thrust upon these people, and now they have to kind of exist with us here in the middle of everything. But you definitely get some chances to see the local culture.
Compare yourself, the Citrus South Tule Henrique, to the Lagos, Nigeria Henrique.
Citrus South, and up to that point, I'm a very, very calm, relaxed person who can let things just sort of roll off my shoulders, and no big deal. I'm not going to worry about it. If it's very important, then I'll argue it or stand up for it. But the culture here in Nigeria is very aggressive and very confrontational. You won't get into a physical confrontation. There's no fights. There may be some yelling and pushing, but you're really having to stay on top of your game and be aware of things, and always look for the scam or the hustle. You pick up quickly arguing to protect yourself. So that's a big cultural thing that I picked up in about 2 years, where I found myself having to really argue things and say, no, that's not right now. And you pick up a little bit of the dialect, and you kind of lose your patience. And that's one thing that's kind of changed me. It's kind of losing my patience with things. I mean, nice people, really nice people, but it's just another big city aspect here. Like, I guess the old days of New York, where you had the aggressive, impolite New York people that were always arguing, and that's the same thing I get here. But I'm happy that when I get home to San Diego in California, I'm back to the old Citrus South Rico, calm, cool, non-argumentative, but then I don't feel like I have to be. But definitely going out and visiting the people. They don't have any proper sewage facilities, so they're all living on their toilets, and there's not a lot of circulation there for the water to changed out. It's not in a real area with a big current, and trash is just everywhere. I mean, it's just dumped on bottles, bags. And you come out here with a little sense of environmental protection. You would just be sickened by it.
So is that a kind of a big shift for you, even coming from the San Diego area?
Yeah, huge. I mean, Bangkok was dirty in many ways, but much cleaner. Pakistan was very clean unless you looked down in the creek beds where they dumped all the trash, but that was sort of out of sight unless you really looked for it. But here in Lagos, I mean, you just see people constantly just dropping their bag or their water bottles or throwing the trash outside of their car as they're waiting at the light. It's just very common. Everybody does it. I still refuse to do that, and I put the trash in my pocket until I find a dumpster somewhere.
So is that kind of a cultural shift? I guess I'm curious, like, do you know what that arises from?
The only thing I came up with, because I was in Bali and I saw the same thing and all these beautiful little cultural sites and landmarks where there was just, the guide would drop his water bottle where he was standing explaining to us this beautiful Goa Gajah elephant cave, and then leave his chip wrapper right next to it on the ground. And the only thing I could come up with is there's the lack of education with biodegradability. For centuries they've been peeling a banana or a mango and whatever, and then just leave the peelings, and then that just disappears. Well, now all of a sudden all their food, they're taking it out of plastic bags and water bottles, and they're doing the same thing because nobody's really saying, hey, this isn't biodegradable. This will be here next year, 10 years, 20 years. It won't disappear into the ground after a few rains and a few seasons passing. I mean, that's really all I could come up with, because I don't know. There really hasn't been any study or sociological research into why there's just so much rubbish. Tons of it. It's crazy.
Well, we're getting on toward the end of the podcast here, and so I'd like to take a left-hand turn on you and ask about your students and your experience, I don't know, over the last 10, 15 years. As you've seen the digital age kind of coming into the classroom with YouTube and Google and Wikipedia, in that environment, and since you have a different perspective than a lot of the people that have been on our podcast so far, what does it mean in that environment, that digital environment, to be educated?
It's extremely important because I'm sure most of you are aware of the Ebola crisis here in West Africa. We had to go to online school. So our entire school year was postponed for 3 weeks. So everybody stayed in their home countries or wherever they were at the time. Like, I was stuck in England for 10 days, and we had to conduct classes. And then when we came back to Lagos, the teachers were brought back to conduct online school. So we had a Edline where we would post work, links to IXL Math for some math homework, or links to Spelling City to do vocabulary and spelling tests, Raz Kids for literacy and novel studies we could do online. So we've become very digital overseas just because of the possibilities of online school and evacuations. You still have to have your 185 contact days with students. Otherwise, you're like snow days, I guess, would be in the Midwest or the East Coast. You have to make up those days at some point. Well, overseas, in Pakistan as well, we had online school for 3 days, but here we had it for 3 weeks. People have to be proficient. Our kids have tech classes twice a week, always new and current software. We're working on opening up the Google Classroom as just an option to do online work. Yeah, it's important to know just a lot of the basics, but having reliable internet too is the biggest problem that we have here. Is you get a lot of emails later saying, "Oh, I couldn't do this because the internet was down," or maybe a family with 3 or 4 kids only has a couple laptops and they're on vacation. And now the high school senior who has an important essay to write gets priority, while the 3rd grade student who has a little novel study to comment on or do their lit circles with, they're kind of on the bottom of the priority list there with the family. So you'll get an email from them saying, "My brother had this long paper, so I never got the internet, or I never got the computer." A lot of different things you have to hold accountable to, these families, and going online. It's stressful for them. I mean, it's hard enough for us as teachers, but I couldn't imagine being in a country somewhere without your stuff, and then you have to stay for a while.
So, have you noticed that the students in your classes, have you noticed any differences in their relationship to the materials or to the learning with some of the new digital tools that are out there?
Raz Kids is nice because you can do a lot of reading assessment with the kids through the website. Same with Spelling City. But science is hard. Science is almost impossible. I mean, you're a science teacher. You know it's hands-on.
Yeah.
It's about getting your fingers in there and feeling it and working it. And there's only so much we can do. But hopefully you can send back an assignment. Well, here, gather up this material if you can gather this, or if you can find something here and create something. Like we're doing energy and electromagnetism here right now, and the kids need to turn on a light bulb with some wires and a D-cell battery. I don't know how many of them are going to have that at home if we were at online right now. So science is the most difficult. But math, there's Khan Academy. Are you familiar with Khan Academy?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's more high school-aged videos on instruction. So some of us, what we've done is we'll video ourselves teaching the math lesson and then post it on Edline for the kids to watch. And that way, they can rewind, watch again, rewind, watch again. They won't get that personal one-on-one explanation, but believe me, we're constantly learning here, trying to figure out new ways to make it better, so make it easier for the kids and enrich our environment. Try to duplicate the classroom as best you can, but it's still pretty hard.
So the last question we like to ask is, what is the purpose of an education? I think you have kind of a unique read on that with having so many international students, and we've gotten a lot of typical U.S. answers on that. So what's sort of the international take on what is the purpose of an education?
These kids to be able to grow up to be good communicators across cultural lines, to understand that accepting of each other, not just tolerating, you have to accept each other and understand each other in a really deep understanding of how to deal with, like the Pakistani kids with the Indian kids, how they can maybe heal wounds over time by working with each other and seeing that each other's just a child with a loving family, love for sport, love for learning. A lot of these Nigerian kids here who are going to grow up to be the country's leaders. We're going through a big election right now with basically another one of those pick your poison type situations. And hopefully these kids will learn to question authority or question these people who are obviously corrupt and take their country into the next century, into a more positive role in society and for the people. So I guess internationally it's definitely about more than just learning how to read and write and learning how to do your mathematics and some science experience. It's about crossing cultural boundaries.
Interesting. Well, I think there are a lot of U.S. schools and students that might benefit, but I think all of us could benefit from being able to communicate better and understanding other cultures better. Thank you, Rico, for taking some time to talk to us, giving us the international perspective on education there. And as we wrap up, what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you if they have some questions or want to follow up?
They can write me on my email address, rico.guerreiro gu@gmail. I don't know. Will you give it to them, or should I just give it now?
No, I can link that up. We can link that up in the show
Okay,
notes.
yeah, it's just my personal Gmail account. That's fine.
Perfect.
Yeah, if anybody's interested in going international too, I highly recommend it.
Well, if you don't mind staying on for just a couple more minutes, we'll just wrap this up
that's
here. Thank you for taking some time.
Thank you, Steve. That was great.
If you've been enjoying the conversations and insights here on the podcast, share it with a friend. Great ideas demand to be shared. You can also help fellow parents and educators by subscribing to the Tabletop Inventing Podcast in iTunes, leaving a rating, and writing a review. If you use Android, subscribe, leave us a rating, and write a review in Stitcher. Links to subscribe can be found at www.ttinvent.com/podcast. Contact us, and we'll think through the comments and answer your questions here in the podcast. And be sure to let us know if you'd like a shout-out or to remain anonymous. You can share your comments and questions at www.ttinvent.com/podcast or by emailing us at podcast@ttinvent.com. Let's discuss your thoughts and questions. Join us again next time when we will again seek to answer the question, what is the purpose of an education? And as educators, how do we awaken the inventor in each of our students?